Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Thank you all so much for coming to the webinar today. Show us your trusted micro credentials, or show us the trusted micro credentials. Really excited to have this opportunity to talk with our panelists today to show you some of the great work that has been happening over the last year. This is the third of our Trusted Micro Credential webinars, and this is the one where we've really been able to move from the talking about it and talking about the possibilities and what it can do to showing you what it will actually look like. And we have three panelists today from various members of the Trusted Micro-Credential Coalition, as well as some of my colleagues from OneEd Tech, and we'll be thrilled to share with you some of our story and be happy to answer some of your questions. So without further ado, I am Rob Coyle, the Digital Credentials Program Manager at OneEd Tech, and I help to oversee our digital credential program. And I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves just very quickly, who you are and what your role is and where you're from. So Kim, Heather, and then Tommy.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Kim Moore, and I'm the Executive Director of Workforce Professional and Community Education at Wichita State. I'm also a OneEd Tech board member and a founding member of the Trusted Microcredential Coalition.
Thanks, Kim. So glad you can join us today. Heather?
Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Carl. I'm a Senior Director of Product Management at Territorium, and my responsibility is our digital credentialing product.
Thanks, Heather.
Hi,
And
everyone.
Tommy?
Good morning and afternoon. And my name is Thomas Mindlin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Proof of Knowledge.
Thank you so much. Before we get into the showcasing all of the great work of our panelists, I'm going to hand it over briefly to our colleague, Kelly Hoyland from OneEd Tech, who can do a brief intro of herself, but also talk about what are these trusted micro credentials, just to help level set everyone and share some of the work that has gone into making today possible. Kelly?
Good morning, everyone. So I'm Kelly Hoyland. I'm the Director for Higher Education Programs here at OneEd Tech. So I have the pleasure of working with many of our higher ed institutions who are trying to do this work with credentialing to really showcase the learning for their students. So as Rob said, I'll do a little bit of level setting. So what is a trusted micro-credential? If you haven't seen our previous work, what our community did is we took a stab at designating what a OneEd Tech trusted credential would be. And this really looks at a digital credential that's going to be verifying a specific knowledge or application for a learner. And the purpose is to make sure that it's very verifiable and portable so that those individuals can take this learning, their achievements, where they want, when they want, and still have that trust to make sure that it is really representing something that they have achieved. So the key features to that is the first, that it aligns to Open Badges 3.0, which is the technical standard that underlies most of the digital badging platforms that are out there. Make sure you ask that question because that is what allows that technical ability to really make it so learners can take their achievements where they want. The next is that the credential aligns with our framework, which we'll touch on a little bit more. It's about what kind of information needs to be included in that credential to make sure that it has value beyond the organization that issued it. So to make sure that they can understand what the criteria was, what is it actually representing the learner can do. We do know that trusted credentials have to meet that minimum, but they do have the ability to add additional information on top of that. So it doesn't mean that you can't have more, but it's just kind of setting some levels so that as an ecosystem, as an industry, as a larger connected world, we have some better expectations for what is included in those credentials. And so that's what a OneEd Tech trusted credential is. Why did we create this? Is we know that open badges are used for many different reasons. They're all very valuable reasons, but it allowed some confusion to bubble up in the market, especially as we look to employers and other people who aren't the issuers, but those who maybe are receiving them on behalf of the learners. Because I could earn a digital badge for being a proposal reviewer, great, wonderful, thank you for my recognition. That doesn't really matter if I'm applying for a job, So we wanted to make sure that we had the right kind of information so that they can understand the context of what was the badge issued for, who is doing the issuing. We still have a lot of trust in a lot of different organizations, higher eds, training orgs, things like that, to make sure that you trust the organization that's issuing it, and then what is the intended value. So making sure that we can represent that value to the learner for them and their next step. So how did we actually define this? We created our Trusted Microcredential Coalition, which all of our panelists have been a part of, to really identify what are those consistent expectations. So as we looked across employers, educators, other organizations, issuing platforms, what are kind of the expectations that we should expect from these badges, from these trusted credentials? What do we need to know? Currently, our coalition is about 34 organizations across not only the US, but also internationally, helping us to really understand what that is. If you want to learn more, we will put a link in the follow-up resources as well. So what did they actually define? They defined kind of 2 levels for a trusted credential. We left a bucket for other microcredentials and recognition badges because there are a number of other use cases that might not fit this framework. This is just a note to say that not every open badge is going to be a trusted credential. Those open badges still have a lot of value. They still have portability and all of the great things that we want for these credentials. We just did not include them in this because they were a different use case. So our 2 that we came up with was a trusted microcredential knowledge and then also the application level. When this group came across, we had a lot of conversations about taxonomy, and most institutions have much larger taxonomies than this. But when we started to dive into what is the additional information we need to know the context for the learning, what the achievement represents, it really came down to, do they know it or have they applied it? Was kind of the 2 level sets. Most taxonomies, like I said, have a mastery or other levels, but really we came down to those 2 levels. And the knowledge is they've been exposed to it, they have a set of knowledge, they've demonstrated that knowledge through an assessment. And then the application is not only do they know it, but they've applied that knowledge and it has been assessed. And that assessment aligns with the outcomes. So those are kind of our 2 levels for trusted credentials. And so why does it matter? The metadata behind that. So for each of those levels, we've defined kind of what additional information, things like clearly articulating the outcomes, the earning criteria, who is the issuer, is there accreditation tied to that work? All of that information goes into that metadata. And the reason why that's important is that builds the trust. So why do we call them trusted credentials? Because they have the data for the people who are then receiving them to be able to understand what actually happened. What is representative of this work? There is the opportunity to include things like evidence and rubrics and all of that great detail that tells that rich story for our learners. So how's this work been going? So we launched this work in June of 2023. We very quickly finalized the framework, and I say quickly because 6 months is actually pretty quick if you work with higher ed institutions. That we were able to kind of finalize that framework and say, here's our levels, and started to get it out into the market, had some additional voices come in, had some, making sure we were on the right track. From there, we are currently in the process of defining what those expectations look like in detail now. So if a platform is going to actually issue a credential, what kind of information does it, and how do they do that technically, and what does that all look like? But also from an institutional side. So it's easy to say we want you to include, assessment information, but what does that mean? Like, do we need the actual test? No, we don't need the, like having some of those kind of conversations is where we are now. Our plan is by March to have that set a little bit more finalized for people. And then by June, we would have the expectation that organizations will have kind of the details and not only how to do it, but then how we can kind of approve or endorse that they have met the expectations. So a couple of things that have happened between, December of last year and now. We started by calling this a trusted microcredential. As we've had additional conversations and talked through use cases and implementation, we've decided to rename these to the One EdTech Trusted Credential, because some people will use these to issue things that are not considered micro. They might be very much a macro credential or things like that. So we wanted to have that flexibility. We are currently working on the best practices. So we have two of our technology providers who are actually working through what this means from the technical side so we can create those best practices. And then also we have Kim who's here who will share kind of from the institutional perspective what that process has looked like and so that we can build the best practices out and then meet our other timelines as we had talked about. So that's enough of a background. From here, I'm going to actually pass it to Kim to kind of share what this actually looks like from an institution who's issuing trusted credentials. So Kim. Oh, you are muted, Kim. We
I knew
always
I
have
would
to
do
do that.
that.
Yeah.
On the screen in front of you, the first slide shows you what we are issuing, and that is what I'm going to talk about today, the Spiro Career Readiness Microcredential. This is the first trusted microcredential in the world. I think I can safely say that. Today, that's what I'm going to be talking about. Those of you that know me and have heard me many other times, know that I created the microcredential program at Wichita State in the form of badges about a decade ago. And these were all for non-degree seeking students. And for the last decade, that served us well. However, as time changes and the workforce has evolved, especially since COVID, the focus of microcredentials and their value and purpose in the workplace has also changed. The skill-based education for both non-degree and degree-bound students is in demand. And trust continues to be an issue because how do people know that what we're issuing really is credible? Because so many people are issuing credentials. As Kelly mentioned, you get a credential for just about doing anything these days. So how do we distinguish ourselves and what we are issuing as being of rigor and trust? And so, and that's probably the most common issue I'm asked about trust. And so I'm going to share today our journey at Wichita State to create the very first trusted microcredential. So we're going to begin at step one. And that is something that we had for badges, which is a taxonomy, a definition of badges institutional wide, but we did not have it in relationship to microcredentials. And so that's where we start is you need a institutional definition of the work that you're doing, whether it's badges, whether it's microcredentials or another type of credential. You need to have a definition, a taxonomy that's accepted at your institution by everyone and is used consistently. Or right there, you've lost trust. So that's step one. Okay. Sorry. Here we go. I've lost my PowerPoint. Okay, so we're going to talk today about what is, whoop, my slide. Sorry, Kelly. Can you all hear me?
We sure can, Ken.
Oh, sorry, you just
Yeah.
can't. Okay, I apologize. I've lost the PowerPoint. So let me get back here.
All right. While you're doing that, I'll just acknowledge for anyone who didn't see, there was a question in the chat, of course, around if we'll be sharing the slides, and we will be doing that when we share out the recording. So yes, everyone will get a copy of the slides. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. So we've talked about the academic definition of microcredentials at Wichita State, and Kelly shared with you what is a trusted microcredential. And so that is something that is a bit different. You see our definition, and then you see what is a trusted microcredential, and you will see that the trusted microcredential also has to align to the trusted microcredential framework requirements. And so our first program is called Spiro. And the working in conjunction with the W. Frank Barton School of Business Spiro project which is aimed at unlocking the potential of Wichita and its citizens. Spiro is the Latin for hope. So it has a dual focus of preparing individuals to transform their lives through meaningful employment and guiding their efforts to advance in the workforce. And there are a lot of people, as we know, that are out there that don't have degrees and that don't have skills, and they are stuck in dead-end, low-paying jobs. And so Spirit, in focusing on hope, giving these people hope of a better future. And so the Koch Foundation very generously donated $400,000 to kick off the program. And so what Spiro does is Spiro really is 2 micro-credentials. It is one for career readiness and one for entrepreneurship. But today I'm going to focus on career readiness because that is really a good example of skill-based education that can change lives. So again, this credential is designed for individuals that really lack essential skills, and they don't even know what talents they have. And so they just need some help getting started on a career pathway. So the Spiro program is really a gateway to overcoming their obstacles. And what's wonderful is that Spirit is supported by 22 area employers. So these are prominent companies in Wichita that are committed to hiring the graduates of the program, although a job is not guaranteed, but they are committed to providing applied learning experiences and to hiring the graduates if they meet the other requirements for the job. So the program offers comprehensive training and mentorship at no cost to participants. And so there are 2 focuses, entrepreneurship and career readiness. Within each of those micro-credentials, there are 2 parts. There's a 17-week class in the fall and one in the spring in each of those areas. And a credential, a micro-credential, is not issued until a student has completed both the fall and the spring semester of coursework. Then at successful completion of that, they are issued the TrustEd Microcredential in either entrepreneurship or career readiness. And so the Spiro employers, you'll see the images from their logos from each of those companies before you. And we have quite an array of companies, from healthcare to banking to industry to manufacturing. And so there are 22 participants in each one of the micro-credentials, in the entrepreneurship track and in the career readiness track. So 44 total are going, the first cohort of students going through these micro-credentials. And so it's very exciting. The kickoff was a couple of weeks ago. And then there will be a graduation ceremony in the spring, which I look forward to attending, and when the TrustEd Microcredentials will be officially awarded to the students. So let's talk about the TrustEd Microcredential framework. Kelly mentioned it earlier. And in the TrustEd Microcredential framework, there are a number of items that distinguish a microcredential from a trusted microcredential, and it's the metadata that's attached. So you see before you skills, framework alignment, issuer accreditation, the issuer evidence rubric, result, criteria, assessment, duration, achievement type, and endorsement. That's all very valuable data that creates trust when a credential is issued. So looking at how we have applied these to the Spiro program, I'm showing you the actual documents that we submitted to OneEd Tech for review. And we'll start with the skills and frame alignment. So I wanted you to see, it's a lot of information, but I really wanted you to see what we submitted so that you can see an example of what you could submit as evidence that your credential is worthy of the trusted designation. So you will see the learning objectives, the category, the RSD name, and the skills statement attached to each of the modules that are taught within the program. So I'll give you a second to look at that. And it also gives you some good information. So if you see like number 2, develop self-motivation and initiative for career growth, it gives you examples of what you need to do in order to demonstrate that learning objectives. Be a critical thinker, create a positive and productive work environment, modify behavior according to changes, and the skills associated with that. So it really breaks down the learning so that you can demonstrate to employers that you indeed have the skill set that are required by the framework as a trusted microcredential. So then looking at issuer accreditation. So when it comes to accreditation, there are many accreditors. And for the university, of course, many of you are accredited by HLC, which we are. And then within your colleges, the colleges have their individual accreditations. And so, plus there are professional associations that are accreditors. So really defining for the reviewer who accredits the work that's being done. So what's the name of the organization and who accredits it? And then providing the information on the accreditor so that it can be verified. Hopefully they have a website and a logo and a physical address so that we know that they're not just somebody out of their garage creating credentials. So this all gives good information on who is it that the curriculum is basing itself on. It's and being reviewed by these accreditors. So again, here's another, here's where we talk about HLC. So here's the HLC, and most of us would have this information or one of the other higher education accreditors. Okay, so next are the rest of the criteria: the issuer, evidence, rubric, result, criteria, assessment, duration, achievement type, and endorsement. So the issuer of this bureau, Microcredential, is Wichita State. The evidence is applied learning in a professional role play scenario. And then there are assessments. There are additional documents besides the one I'm showing you, where there are assessments and rubric document details. And then again, the rubric, we have laid that out in a separate document for one ed tech's review. The result is that they're going to receive either a microcredential or no microcredential. And the reason for that is the criteria we use to award the credential is a demonstration of mastery of 80% on each assessment and the final role play scenario. So it's a very high standard, a higher standard than most academic curriculum, in that you have to have a mastery of 80% on everything, or you are not issued the microcredential. And so how are students assessed? So there are 4 assessments delivered through Blackboard. Students are allowed to repeat the assessments until they achieve the minimum requirements. So unlike other curriculum where you get one chance and that's it, that's not the goal of microcredentials. The goal of microcredential is skill mastery. So what we want is the students to demonstrate that they have attained the skills and knowledge that are essential in the workplace. And it's really not, we don't care about the grade, just that they have a competency of 80% or more on every assignment so that they can demonstrate knowledge. So they can repeat it until they master it. The duration of the credential is 22.5 hours, which those in academia know to be, if you're awarding college credit, a half credit. And the achievement type will be a trusted microcredential. And at this point, we don't have any endorsements, but I'm hoping that once this is launched, we will receive some endorsements from professional associations and others.
So Kim,
Okay.
two questions came
Yes.
in that I think are pretty close to some things you answered, but let's call it out specifically. One, are these credit-bearing credentials?
At Wichita State, they are credit bearing. We have focused our badge work the last 10 years and now focusing microcredential work on for credit.
Mm-hmm.
And so microcredential can be 3 credit hours or less, where a badge is 1 credit hour or less. which is a type of microcredential.
Mhm.
But people can do it for both credit or non-credit, for both degree bound and non-degree bound.
Thank you. And you also mentioned an 80% level of mastery score. And the question is that a WSU requirement or is that a One Ed Tech requirement for the framework?
No, that's a WSU requirement. And we set that requirement back 10 years ago when we developed badges. We first developed badges because really we had to determine, and you'll have to determine for your own institution, what you consider to be the level of knowledge and demonstration of knowledge that you consider to be mastery.
Mhm.
And for us, it's 80% or more. It's not just good enough to pass at the standard, I think it's 60% these days, but that doesn't demonstrate mastery and being able to apply the knowledge. So we really wanted to set the bar higher for microcredentials at our institution.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kim.
Mhm.
All right.
So now that we have created the microcredentials, what comes next? And that is where our next speakers come in. We are pleased to be partnering at Wichita State with Territorium, and they are working on the technology part so that we will be able to issue the first trusted microcredential in the spring, hopefully by March. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Thanks so much, Kim. We are really excited to be able to work with you and Wichita State, both on your broader credential issuance and doing this new project with the first trusted microcredentials. For those of you who don't know Territorium, we can go to the next slide. For learners, our application is both a web and mobile app that lets them track both their credentials that they've earned, but aligns it as well to the knowledge, skills, and abilities and their readiness for specific career or job. We can go to the next slide. For issuers, we have a full suite of digital credentialing solutions that complement our assessments platform. And we let our issuers build either an open badge or CLR credentials with case compliant alignments for learning outcomes or frameworks. And we support many different issuance methods, whether you're doing minimum score, multi-levels, letter grades, etc. And we also have the ability for our credentials to stack into one CLR that can aggregate multiple credentials from open badges and a pretty advanced renewal, revocation workflow, bulk processes, and learning management system integrations as well. So we can go to the next slide. Some of the specific new things with implementing trusted microcredentials is that it's really just a robust implementation of the Open Badge 3 standard, but there are new additions of context and schema references, which is in the back-end technical part of the credential. But for you as a issuer, an important distinction is to pick whether or not you're creating this as a trusted knowledge or a trusted application credential that has to be included in the credential. And it's something that we've added into our platform, which I'll show you when we get to a live demo here just in a second. We have, this is just a sampling of some of the capabilities in our platform, but ones that specifically have been called out in the earlier slides today to comply with the Trusted Microcredentials framework. And so some specific areas and skills that need to be updated is this framework provides specific, clear guidance that skills need to be in alignments with definitions and links to the third-party library they come from. How competency frameworks are expressed also in alignments, which uses the case standard. And we also recommend when you implement evidence and results that are included in your credentials here, that you also have some level of privacy handling that's included in the credential, so learners have control over whether or not they want to share grade data with the person that is going to be verifying or viewing the credential. One thing that can be sometimes confusing in implementing this is what do we mean by the term duration? And as we've worked with the team at One Ed Tech, the implementation for that is the fields related to available credits and earned credits. That is a pretty open field, so it's important that as you pick what your duration is going to be, that you're specific in what information you're going to include in the credential, so somebody in the future who's consuming it understands what you mean. if it's contact hours, if it's time in class, if it's specifically credit bearing. Those are important things to make sure it's clear what you're including in the credential. And then there's 2 additional extensions that are outside of the Open Badge 3 standard that build on to include the issuer accreditation that Kim was talking about, and also more detail on the assessments. So we have concentrated our updates both on the capability of our customers to be able to add the trusted microcredentials elements, and then also the wallet user interface for learners to be able to understand how to view the difference in a trusted microcredential, and added some rendering to identify that this credential is distinct from others, having the trusted mark, and some explanation in the footer to help people understand what the framework is and how to get to it. So I think if it's okay for me to grab the slides, I can just do a quick demo of our application. And we've pulled a little bit of Kim's data. It's not final data, but it's just a mock-up for some examples of what the credentials would look like, so that you can get a feeling of how to create these yourself. Just to double check with the One Ed Tech team, you can see my screen okay?
Yes,
Okay,
we can.
great.
Thanks.
If I'm looking to the side, it's my other screen. So one of the most important things that we've been talking about is detail on how the credential is assessed. So we've actually added the ability for customers to create detailed rubrics, and I'll just show one example. This is an example that is either for completion or non-complete credit or no credit. And we could also do that instead for points if you wanted to do a scoring-based rubric. These rubrics can be expressed in the credential and in the metadata detail of the credential as well. And the extension that's for the Open Badge 3 standard also gives you the ability to add additional descriptive information about that assessment, how it was evaluated, any additional reference information as well, if you want that to be available for someone who's going to verify the credential. We have a lot of elements of the platform, so I'm being quick to just show you the relevant ones. When we allow our customers to build an achievement, which is the bulk of the text of the credential, these are the common fields that are required in the Open Badge standard. Some of the new elements that we've added is if the customer is going to be adding a trusted microcredential, or in the future, as Kelly said, just credential, we'll update that as One Ed Tech updates their guidance. They can pick whether it is a trusted knowledge or application. Again, that's important because this is a specific type of credential that needs to be included in the data of the credential for it to be verified. And then just like normal, they can build any other related credential. So I'll just show one example here that we might be able to use, see, different scores. And I'll just show letter grades as an example. So we might be able to say, in terms of how we're going to express the scoring, if the student got a B, they get one version of the badge, which might be, say, lower proficiency level. They got a higher level score, it might be a higher level. So once you have your credentials built, we can show you what an example of issuance would be. So I'll just do this one example. As I mentioned, we align our learning outcomes to the credential. So Kim had showed you some of her learning outcomes before. You can, we're gonna take a look at this test user, Abby, and as you go to issue the credential, you can include the information on how they complied with the rubric and go ahead and issue the credential. And then what we'll do is look at Abby's wallet. And she stayed logged in, which is very helpful when you do a live demo. We're gonna claim her credential. And then you'll get to see what it looks like. This is her view inside her wallet, but let's go to the third-party view so you see what a verifier would see. So we've added this temporary banner to specifically call attention to this being a trusted microcredential, and we'll update the language, of course, as the final One Ed Tech guidance comes out. But you see all of the detail on the credential, the issuer, its valid date, the detail of the result and evidence. In this case, this was based on completion, not a computed score, the detail of the rubric performance, the assessment descriptive information, what the credit fields, that these are the 2 specific technical fields, credits available and credits earned, that relate to duration, the metadata description on the achievement and the badge criteria to be awarded. And with the skills, we've included third-party links to the framework that explains and provides the definition for that skill. The related learning outcomes right now, these are served on our own internal links, but there's also some wonderful opportunities with OneEdTech to link to the Case2 network. We've also then included the accreditation information. Our customers set that up when they create their institutional profile in our system. And then here at the bottom, we might improve where we put this, but we wanted to provide some reference information for somebody if they don't know what a trusted microcredential was, to be able to get to the OneEdTech framework. So just one question, Rob or Kelly, do you want me to show the technical version too, the JSON, or is this sufficient for today?
I think that's sufficient for today. If anyone really wants to get in and dive into the JSON, feel free to reach out and we can connect you with Heather and dive into that a little bit more. So Heather, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before we pass it off to proof of knowledge?
I would say for a verifier, I think it's really important that the specific credential type fields we talk about, that you pay attention to being able to understand and find those.
Mm.
And if you're then an issuer, making sure that you're really clear about which type it is, what skill library you're going to use, so that your provider can help you make sure you're putting that right information in the credential. And the other, we didn't expect that duration was actually about credits. I originally thought it was start or end date because of a time range, but being clear and understanding what those fields are that need to be completed is very helpful.
Great. Thank you so much. And, Kelly kind of alluded to this earlier. We're really grateful for Kim and Heather who have been asking questions as they go through, and it helps us to refine sort of the guidance and issuing recommendations that are coming. And ultimately, we will be putting out sort of an implementation guide that helps sort of answer some of these questions. Now, what I'd like to do is hand over the session to our friend from Proof of Knowledge, who has also been a tremendous pioneer and ally in all of this. And we are grateful for their participation. And so, Thomas, do you want to walk us through what a trusted microcredential looks like in your platform?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, hello, everyone. And it's an honor to be here today as part of this important conversation hosted by OneEdTech. It's been a pleasure working with all of you to make this happen. First of all, for those who aren't familiar with POC, also known as Proof of Knowledge, it's a platform that empowers institutions to issue digital verifiable credentials and microcredentials on the blockchain. So just to highlight some of our key features, our platform, of course, complies with Open Badge 3.0, but also with the European learning model. And we offer advanced white labeling features, multilingual support, and seamless API integrations. We also support bulk issuance with personalized transcripts, stackable credentials and learning pathways, and offer a Web 2 free version and a pay-per-use model for blockchain credentials with no setup fees and no maintenance fees. But today, I'm excited to share how we seamlessly support the adherence to the OneEdTech Trusted Credential Framework, aligning with its standards while providing a flexible and efficient solution for credential issuance. So as we know, the global demand for secure and verifiable skills recognition continues to grow. Frameworks like OneEdTech's Trusted Credential Framework, as you see, Rob, I already changed the name, are essential for fostering trust and transparency in the credential ecosystem. So one of the key aspects of the OneEdTech Trusted Credential Framework is its clear identification of required and recommended metadata fields. So with a simple toggle inside Proof of Knowledge, you can activate a feature that highlights the mandatory and recommended fields directly within our platform. So this ensures compliance with the framework while simplifying the process for credential issuers. So Kelly, so as you can see, you just click on that toggle and you can certainly understand which is the information that you need to upload inside each one of the credentials. But we didn't stop there. So we understand the importance of making credential issuance seamless, even when dealing with detailed and personalized information. So that's why we offer multiple data upload options. One, of course, is through API integration. So this automates the data transfers and ensures scalability by connecting with existing systems. Or another alternative is the bulk upload through Excel, which is a simple solution for institutions that prefer to avoid involving technical teams. So this versatility ensures that any institution, regardless of its technological capacity, can adopt the trusted microcredential framework with ease. So to continue, our credentials are issued encrypted on the blockchain. So this ensures that student privacy is protected while making credentials fraud-proof and verifiable. Employees can verify authenticity simply by entering the recipient's last name, providing a secure yet user-friendly experience. And we've integrated directly with different social media platforms like LinkedIn, which enables recipients to easily add their credentials to their profiles or share them as posts. So this not only boosts the visibility for learners, but also empowers them to showcase their achievements with confidence and authenticity. So one important thing here is that institutions can customize the whole experience for the learner, not only for the learner, but for different employers. So on this note, with our customizable white labeling features, this transforms the shared credentials into a branded marketing opportunity, which drives traffic and engagement. So you can even tailor call to actions such as interested in this program, learn more here, turning each shared credential into a potential recruitment opportunity. So to continue, Kelly, this would be like how it looks like from the learner side or from employer side that would like to verify all the additional information, all the metadata that was uploaded aligned to the trusted microcredential framework. So in this way, recipients and employers can quickly and confidently access critical credential information. So of course, as we were talking about, this builds trust, fosters transparency, and enhances the value of this credential in the job market. So at POC, our mission is to make digital credentialing accessible, reliable, and transformative for institutions and learners alike. So together we can create a future where every skill and achievement is recognized and trusted worldwide. And yeah, to be short and sweet, thank you to One Tech and all of here for this opportunity. And we look forward to collaborating with all of you in order to drive the future of digital credentials forward.
Thank you so much. Really, really exciting work to see this all coming to life and in multiple platforms. So it's, you know, it's not just conceptual thing. It's we're out there, we're able to do this, and so much work has gone into the prep for the framework itself and for the implementation. So again, just really grateful to all of you. Now we want to hand over to Xavi from One Ed Tech, who is going to show a third possible implementation. This is within our own One Ed Tech internal reference implementations. This is not a platform that we offer or provide out there. It's just our way to help be able to do a proof of concept, as well as also partner with our members and making sure that all these things that we're talking about, we can actually build. So, but we wanted to show a third possibility so everyone can see that there are options and there are different ways that the framework can be applied in platforms. And so with that, Xavi, please take it away.
Thank you, Rob. You're explaining better than me. So that's application that we provide to our members just to test, to play with the specs and test their implementation. So if you recall all the expected metadata from the framework, you will see that some of the data related to the issuer, some of the data related to the achievement definition, and others to the credentials itself. So in the reference implementation, we tackle these parts individually. So for the issuer, I can create an organization, in that case, Wichita State University, with all the information and all the accreditors of that information, of that institution, sorry, with the name, the contact instructions, contact information, whatever. This is the step one. The next one is to go to the achievement definition. So I have to switch role to teachers. I have already created one achievement because the amount of data, especially if the assessment is huge. So here you can see that I'm setting a type of connected trusted credentials, in that case, knowledge. which the application displays some kind of informative panels with all the expectation from the framework. So the name, the general information of the achievement, so with the description, the criteria needed to pass the achievement, what type of achievement is, the duration of, in the case, credit available, the alignments to the specific skills definitions. Here you can see all the alignments that Kim showed before, whether you pass, you have that result or not, and definition of all the 4 assessments that contains or that defines the achievement. In that case, this is a collection of questions, so it has some rubrics here and have the sections with the question. Okay, you can define also the text of the question itself. You can see here that there is the information of all the assessments. I can go very, very quick. And with that, we have the issue information, we have the achievement information. The rest of the metadata is in the credential itself. So for going to the credential, I should go to the test, to the learner records. I have my test learner here, Laya. And here I can set the claim of that achievement. In that claim, I can also set that this credential will be one active trusted credential knowledge. And I can just fill the metadata. So it requires some evidence. I can just attach a file. I can expect the results, and if available, I can make some endorsement. With that, the missing piece is what the learner sees, and I'm switching to the learner here, and I can see all the information of the credentials with the attachment file, the links to the alignments. We are using the rich skill description as Heather mentioned, the definition of the results. Here there will be also the information of the assessment. And that's pretty all. So we are still working on adding some features, but it's available for all of you just to test. So thank you, and hand it over back to Rob.
Thank you, Xavi. Again, I've said it already, and I'm going to say it again. It is just so exciting to see all of this coming to life in actual platforms. We've been talking about this framework and the hard work of the coalition for about a year, and being able to really see it out there. It's so exciting to me, and grateful for Xavi and his leadership in helping to define what this looks like, and again to Territoria and Proof of Knowledge and Wichita for their pioneering efforts. So we do have a few minutes left, and we've had a couple of questions come in. I do see some of the questions have gotten answered already in the chat, but I think I would like to revisit some of those for the group and give everyone an opportunity to chime in. But the first question I really like is the last one that Rob Gibson just asked in the chat. What does the metadata look like in terms of what the employer sees? How do they access the data that is in the credential? And so that it's transparent to them. I don't know, who would like to go first? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
I did just put my response in the chat so everybody has it too. We could only see a couple parts of the platform. What I demonstrated was our public link, the human readable version of a credential that you might link to on your resume or public profile of sorts. In our application, which is a digital wallet, the learner can also grab a verifiable link. We've been talking about the JSON, which is a code of the credential. There's also a baked image format that they could download. So another application, like if an employer had a job application system, could request one of those formats. And they, again, because they were all talking about Open Badge 3, they would have to be requesting an Open Badge 3 format. One thing we didn't mention, which I think is important, is that the trusted framework is not approved for CLR at the moment. So if you're trying to issue a CLR 2.0, that the ability to apply this framework specifically for TrustEd is not there. The basic data, the information is the same between an Open Badge and a CLR, but not the trusted part yet. So I think the guidance right now is starting with open badges, but the distinction between the two standard types is important because if you're working with employers and they need to update their job application system to request your credentials, you want to make sure you know what credential format they want so that you're issuing in the format that they're going to seek to request.
That's right. Yeah, the beauty of the latest version of the Open Badges standard is that you get both that human and machine readable. So you can ingest that data into a system, through the JSON, as you mentioned, becomes machine readable, machine actionable, but also there's that web page type display as well, where you can see all of the data in there. Thomas, anything that you'd like to add, or did we cover it all?
It's super similar. It could be done in a human readable place, like a landing page, which I've shown before, which is easy to access, and the learner has a unique link for each one of their credentials so that they can decide to whom they want to share it with. That information is also protected and encrypted. And on another note, yeah, what the learner can decide to share that image, which also carries the metadata, and it also has the JSON, which is more machine readable or readable for geeks like us. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So a couple of other questions that are coming in. One is, I think, related to CLR, which Heather, you kind of mentioned already. Right now, the framework was designed specifically for open badges. Is it possible that we might get to CLR someday? I think yes, and I see Kelly nodding, so I'm not totally out on a limb saying that. But we're not there yet, right? We are taking this one step at a time. And we're starting with Open Badges 3 as the base, and we're building on there, and we'll see what happens next as we continue to evolve and iterate this. So great question for that. Let's see. I also wanted to go back a minute and talk about skills. There was a question about skills earlier. Kim, in your document, you showed RSDs, and we dropped a definition of what RSDs are in there. But there are alternatives to traditional RSDs as well, right? The framework does not require any one particular skill library. So would you just mind mentioning briefly, what are RSDs from your perspective? And then if anybody wants to kind of chime in around what are some of the other options are for defining skills.
Sure. Well, we use the rich skill descriptors because they are widely accepted and recognized in our community. And so, if you're picking one, that's a good one to pick because there's a lot of information out there about them. And it was something that was easily recognized and really fit with the needs of the Spiro program. So that's why we are using the rich skill descriptors. I worked with the School of Business and they had their choice, and that's the direction that they went.
Great, thank you. And I think even Heather, when you were showing Territorium, you linked to OpenRSD, right? Which is another type of library that's out there.
Yeah, we have the specific skills that Kim had requested, that those are RSDs expressed in those credentials. We also have a skill library in our platform that aligns to, we work with Talent Neuron, which is our job application vendor. So they have a skills library as well, and they have definitions related to that. So I think the takeaway for this, if you're creating credentials, is please be clear what your skills are, where they come from. If you want to use a third-party library, if the vendor you're going to pick has a library that you can choose from, I think the big benefit here with the framework is that because we now have a way to include the definition or link to where the definition exists, whoever is reading this, whether it's a human or it's a machine, is always going to be able to know what you mean when you use words to label a skill. And that's really the hard part, because there's a lot of semantic difference when we use a simple word like a skill that's on a resume or even a credential. And this really gives us a lot more power for, whether it's the employer or even if you're going to use this credential for admissions, to understand what the capability of that learner was and if they were able to maybe get transfer credit, because now what's in the credential.
Great, thank you. Chavi or Tommy, anything to add there?
Yeah, no, I think they could
Oh.
succinctly, clearly, answer that. I do agree also with Heather, which is super important to understand where those skills are coming from. And I think like linking those skills so that anyone can understand them is super important, so that it enables anyone to be able to actually understand, okay, what the skills mean. We go to skill alignment and taxonomy. I think we can talk for about 3 hours. But yeah, having the ability to actually put a link there is super helpful.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there was one last question, and in the interest of time, I'm just going to throw out a quick answer, and that is around interoperability. And the beautiful part of all of this work is that it is built on that Open Badges 3.0 specification, which does facilitate interoperability and the ability to port credentials between platforms, giving that learner the real agency over their data, and allows them to share that data when, where, and how, and who with which they choose. So we are going to wrap up here. And thank you all for the questions that have been coming in. I think there's a couple we didn't get to, and I know our panelists would be happy to help answer some of these questions offline for you, especially the questions I think around things related to program review and accreditation and things like that. Okay, so wrapping up here, what are some things that you can do if you want to learn more or get a little bit more involved in this movement? First off, on the slides here, you're going to see we do have information about the coalition and the framework published on the One Ed Tech website, and there's a link for that, and we will be, of course, sharing this out afterwards with all of you. There is also a commitment. If you believe in this work and you think that the idea of having more data is the way to go to help learners maximize the benefits that these credentials offer them, you are welcome to join us in signing this commitment. It's open, it's public. Anyone is more than welcome to add their signature to that. You can read the commitment, who the current signatories are on that commitment, and there's information on how you can add your name there if you were interested. Of course, for all of our institutional members who are here, or districts or training providers in any way, one of the things you can do is start to align your program with the framework already. You can take those steps now to start including that extra data. And you can ask your partners, your tech providers, to start looking at how they can adopt the platform or the framework in their platform. And certainly, we've got several examples on this presentation already that you can use to draw inspiration from. We have provided there, if you want to get a little more on the technical side of it, there's a link to the GitHub, which has the Open Badges specification, as well as some of the additional data points that we've talked about today are in there. Again, this is going to be technical, but I know some of you are going to be really interested in that. And lastly, you can reach out to any of us at One Ed Tech to ask more questions and to learn about the coalition and how you could potentially join the coalition. And the last thing that I do need to mention, we have a Digital Credential Summit. This is an annual event coming up in March in Phoenix. Will be our 9th annual event. And so if you're looking for a little bit of warm weather, come on out and join us. All of our members here will be presenting about the coalition and about many more exciting things, as well as plenty of other members from around the world who will be there to share their stories and help us all to learn from their experiences. So I encourage everyone, please, if you can come and continue the conversation. It's a wonderful event. You'll have a great time. And certainly there's a lot that we can learn as we build and provide this ecosystem for all of our learners to help them achieve their goals. So with that, thank you all very much for your time, your participation, your questions. I'm grateful to our presenters one last time. Thomas, Heather, Kim, Chavi, thank you all for being here. Kelly, wonderful job.